The calm before the storm. The sun was setting over Earth, casting a warm golden glow over the peaceful landscapes. It was a typical evening in the quiet town of Avalon, where the hum of daily life seemed to echo throughout the streets. People were finishing their work, children were playing in the parks, and the elderly gathered in small groups to enjoy the fading sunlight. Nothing seemed unusual, nothing seemed out of place. In this moment of calm, no one could have imagined that everything was about to change. The sky, which had been clear just moments ago, suddenly began to flicker. A series of bright flashes lit up the heavens, followed by the distinct hum of what seemed like a distant engine. At first, people thought it was just a passing plane or perhaps a meteor shower. However, as the strange lights grew brighter and closer, they realized it wasn't anything they had ever seen before. High above the Earth, in the depths of space, a fleet of alien ships had arrived. They were sleek, dark, and massive, like nothing humanity had ever built. The ships were not merely visiting. They were there to conquer. Their arrival was the first sign of the threat humanity would soon face. On Earth, no one knew what was coming. The peaceful calm continued for just a few more minutes as people went about their business, completely unaware of the danger that loomed overhead. In Avalon, a young boy named Jack was still playing with his friends in the park, tossing a ball between them. His laughter filled the air, echoing around the quiet streets. He could never have imagined that in the next few hours, the world would be turned upside down. The first warning came when the sky above them split open with a sudden flash. A deep, low hum vibrated through the ground. People paused, looking up in confusion. The peaceful world was about to be shattered, but no one could have predicted how. The alien ships hovered silently above the Earth, their engines glowing with an eerie blue light. There was no communication, no warning, just the quiet hum of their approach. The only sound in Avalon was the nervous murmuring of the townspeople, slowly realizing that something was not right. Jack was the first to see it, the giant shapes blocking out the stars above. His eyes widened in shock, and he dropped the ball he had been holding. His friends screamed and scattered in fear as the massive ships came into view. Jack's heart raced. He couldn't quite comprehend what was happening, but deep down, he knew that their lives were about to change forever. The ships, unlike anything seen before, were not here to communicate. They were here for something far more sinister. The alien soldiers aboard the ships had one purpose: to invade. They had traveled across galaxies, conquering other civilizations, and Earth was their next target. The humans had no idea what they were up against, but the invaders knew exactly what to expect from Earth's population. Or so they thought. Back at the government headquarters, military officers scrambled to make sense of the situation. Radar screens blipped with signs of the approaching fleet, and panic began to spread. The world had never faced an enemy like this. The entire planet's defense systems were activated, and fighter jets were scrambled into the sky. But there was a chilling realization. They were too late. As the alien ships descended, a few brave pilots launched into the sky to intercept the invaders, but they were immediately struck down. Their weapons were no match for the superior technology of the alien warships. The world watched in horror as these highly advanced beings effortlessly overpowered humanity's best defenses. Still, amidst the chaos, a strange feeling settled over the planet. The humans had faced threats before, from natural disasters to war. But this time, it was different. The alien fleet had underestimated humanity's true power. They believed that Earth's population was just another prey to add to their collection, a weak species that would fall easily under their command. But what the aliens didn't know was that humans were survivors. Their strength didn't lie in their weapons or technology. It lay in their spirit. They fought when all seemed lost. They survived when all seemed hopeless. And most importantly, they would not bow down to anyone, no matter how powerful they seemed. As the alien ships took position above Earth, a quiet determination began to rise in the hearts of humanity. People everywhere started to realize that they couldn't just sit back and wait for their destruction. They would have to fight back. The fight for survival had begun. Jack stood frozen in the park, staring up at the sky. His hands trembled, but something inside him stirred. Deep down, he felt a strange pull, a connection to something larger than himself. Maybe it was fear, or maybe it was something more. A spark of courage that ignited in the face of danger. He had no idea what to do, but he knew one thing: humanity was not going down without a fight. As the ships hovered silently above, the people of Earth waited, their hearts racing. The calm before the storm had ended. Now it was time to face the unknown. The battle was about to begin, and it would be humanity's strength, unity, and raw will that would determine their fate. The world was about to find out why alien soldiers feared humanity's raw power. And it wasn't because of advanced technology. It was because humanity would never give up. The first strike. The silence in Avalon was broken by the deafening sound of alarms. The peaceful town had, for a moment, been unaware of the enormous danger looming over them. Now, panic swept through the streets as people rushed to their homes, hiding in basements and shelters. The ominous, dark ships hovered ominously in the sky above them, casting huge shadows over the city. Jack, still frozen in place, watched as the alien warships began to release their weapons. Bright beams of energy shot down from the ships, tearing apart the landscape and creating fiery explosions. Buildings crumbled to the ground, and the ground itself shook as if the earth itself was screaming in pain. The once calm town was now a battlefield. In the distance, the sound of military aircraft approaching was faint, but growing louder. The soldiers on the ground had no idea what kind of threat they were facing. They had been trained for traditional warfare, for enemy forces they could see and touch. But this was something else entirely. The human forces were hopelessly outmatched. There were no rules to this kind of fight. Jack instinctively ducked behind a nearby tree as a wave of debris and dust erupted from a nearby building. He could hear the screams of others around him, but the sounds of chaos were drowned out by the constant, thunderous blasts above. The world he knew, his world, was falling apart before his very eyes. Across the globe, similar scenes were unfolding. People who had never imagined such destruction were now facing it head-on. The alien invaders had come with one goal in mind: to take control. They had been here before, in other galaxies, and they had always succeeded. To them, humanity was just another stepping stone, a species to dominate. But something about this planet was different. Something about these humans was different. The alien ships descended lower, their engines humming with a low, menacing sound. Their soldiers, armored and ready for battle, began to deploy. From above, they looked like giants descending upon helpless insects, their weapons trained on the unprepared human cities below. The soldiers, armed with advanced weaponry and superior technology, marched down toward the Earth. The human military was in disarray. There was no clear strategy. There were no contingency plans for an invasion of this magnitude. Fighter jets launched into the sky, but their weapons were ineffective against the shields surrounding the alien ships. Missiles exploded harmlessly against their hulls, and even the most advanced tanks and artillery were useless in the face of the invaders' superior technology. But as the destruction continued, a strange thing began to happen. There were small pockets of resistance scattered across the planet. Ordinary humans, without advanced weapons or even formal military training, began to fight back. They had no idea how, but they instinctively knew that they had to protect their homes, their families, and everything they held dear. Jack, now crouching behind a fallen wall, watched in awe as a group of civilians, armed only with rifles and homemade explosives, took on a squad of alien soldiers. It was a hopeless battle, and yet there was something about the way the humans fought that surprised the invaders. Their willingness to keep fighting, to stand up in the face of overwhelming odds, made the aliens pause. The human soldiers had no such hesitation. Even though they were under-equipped and outmatched, they launched desperate attacks, refusing to give in. The initial fear that had gripped the planet was beginning to give way to something else. defiance. Across the world, these small acts of resistance were beginning to ripple through the global consciousness. Humanity was not just going to roll over and die. They were going to fight. They were going to show the invaders what Earth was made of. In the heart of the chaos, military leaders and strategists began to regroup. They realized that they had underestimated the alien threat, but they also understood something else. Humanity had a strength that the aliens had failed to recognize. It wasn't about technology or weapons. It was about resilience, determination, and the will to survive. At that moment, something extraordinary happened. The humans, who had been so outmatched just hours ago, began to adapt. They learned quickly, using their environment, their knowledge, and their sheer willpower to overcome the obstacles in their path. They had no choice but to become resourceful, to use whatever they could to fight back. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he watched the chaos unfold around him. It was terrifying, but there was a fire inside him that had been lit. It was the same fire that burned in the hearts of every human who had been forced to fight for their lives. They might not have advanced weapons or space-age technology, but they had something that the alien invaders couldn't understand, a hunger for survival that it would never die. The battle had only just begun, but one thing was certain. Humanity wasn't going down without a fight. The unexpected resistance. The battle raged on. The alien warships continued their descent, their massive forms blotting out the sky, casting shadows over entire cities. But in the midst of the destruction, humanity's spirit began to shine. What the invaders had not accounted for was the one thing they could never predict: human resilience. Jack had seen it firsthand. People who had never picked up a weapon before were suddenly fighting with a fierce determination. The military was still struggling to mount an organized defense, but ordinary civilians were stepping up, using whatever they could find to defend themselves. Makeshift barricades, improvised explosives, and old rifles passed down through generations were being used to fight back. One group of survivors in a nearby neighborhood had managed to corner a small group of alien soldiers, using the rubble of destroyed buildings as cover. The aliens, heavily armored and equipped with plasma rifles, looked almost invincible. But the humans, with their raw desperation, weren't backing down. In a narrow alleyway, a woman with bloodied hands clutched a shotgun, her face set in a grim expression. She wasn't a soldier. She was a mother, a daughter, and a sister. Yet here she was, standing shoulder to shoulder with others who had no business being in a war. Together, they made a stand. One of the alien soldiers advanced, its massive armored boots crushing debris beneath it. It raised its weapon, aiming directly at the woman. But before it could fire, a man from behind a nearby dumpster leaped out, his rifle raised. With a single shot, the alien soldier fell, a bright, unearthly screech filling the air as it collapsed. The humans didn't hesitate. The moment they saw the alien soldier fall, they rushed forward, attacking with the fury of cornered animals. They didn't care about tactics or strategy. All they cared about was survival. The alien soldiers, caught off guard by the sudden wave of resistance, struggled to adapt. But the humans were relentless. The news of this small victory spread quickly. News outlets, initially in chaos, started reporting on the attacks from all over the globe. Stories of ordinary citizens standing their ground against the alien invaders spread like wildfire. And with every story came a growing sense of hope. If these humans could fight back, so could others. But as the fighting continued, the invaders quickly realized they had underestimated their prey. The aliens, known for their advanced technology and vast resources, had always relied on sheer power to crush their enemies. But what they hadn't expected was how quickly humans adapted. They fought differently, with a kind of tenacity that was impossible to calculate. The aliens began to take casualties. It wasn't much, but the fact that humans had managed to kill even a few of them sent shockwaves through their ranks. These were not the same helpless creatures they had encountered in other galaxies. These humans were different. They were resilient, resourceful, and willing to fight for their survival. no matter the cost. On the front lines, Jack had joined a small group of soldiers, each one determined to make a stand. The plan was simple: use the terrain to their advantage and stay hidden from the aliens' advanced sensors. The humans knew they couldn't win in a direct confrontation, but they didn't have to. They just needed to make the invaders bleed, to let them know that humanity would not go quietly into the night. As night fell, Jack and his team set up an ambush in a dense forest on the outskirts of the city. The alien forces were unaware of the trap waiting for them. As the alien warships hovered overhead, the humans waited, barely breathing, hidden beneath the cover of trees and brush. Then, as the alien patrols moved deeper into the forest, Jack gave the signal. A barrage of gunfire erupted from all directions, aimed at the exposed soldiers. The aliens were thrown into chaos, scrambling for cover. They had been hit hard before, but nothing like this. The humans' weapons might not have been as advanced, but their strategy was effective. The chaos only lasted for a few minutes, but to the humans, it felt like an eternity. Jack's heart pounded in his chest as he fired, ducking to avoid the return fire from the aliens. They fought like never before, their actions born of desperation and a burning need to protect everything they held dear. In the midst of the firefight, one of the alien soldiers broke through the trees, charging directly toward Jack. The alien was faster, stronger, and better equipped. But Jack didn't hesitate. With a swift movement, he fired his rifle, hitting the alien square in the chest. The creature staggered back, a burst of light flashing from its body before it fell to the ground, dead. Jack's breath came in ragged gasps as he looked down at the fallen soldier. He could hardly believe it. They had won. For now, anyway. But the victory felt hollow. It wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. The humans, for the first time, had made a statement. They weren't just victims in this war. They were fighters. And the aliens were beginning to understand that they had made a grave mistake by underestimating humanity. The battle wasn't over, and the war was far from won. But with each small victory, the humans grew stronger. The aliens had thought they could conquer Earth with ease, but humanity had other plans, and with the resistance growing by the day, the invaders would soon learn that they had awakened a sleeping giant. The battle escalates. The war had only just begun, but already the human resistance had changed the course of the conflict. The alien invaders who had expected an easy victory now found themselves facing an enemy they had underestimated. With each skirmish, the tide began to shift. Humanity, united by their shared desperation, had become something far more dangerous than the aliens had ever anticipated. On the outskirts of the city, Jack and his team continued to wage a guerrilla war against the invaders. They had learned quickly that they couldn't rely on conventional tactics. The alien soldiers were far superior in terms of technology and firepower, but they had one thing that the aliens lacked: human ingenuity. The humans were outnumbered, but they didn't fight like they were. Using their environment to their advantage, they set traps, ambushes, and diversions that caught the aliens off guard. Every time the invaders thought they had a clear path to victory, the humans struck back with a ferocity that stunned them. Meanwhile, the world watched in awe as humanity's resolve grew stronger. News outlets broadcasted live footage of civilians standing their ground against the alien onslaught. Social media exploded with stories of ordinary people rising up and fighting back. For the first time in history, humans were united by a common cause, a cause that transcended national borders, politics, and differences. It was humanity versus the invaders, and no one was backing down. But as the battle raged on, the invaders began to adapt. Their superior technology allowed them to quickly analyze human tactics and find ways to counter them. They began deploying more advanced units, including giant war machines and heavily armed infantry. The fight was no longer just about survival. It was about holding the line and preventing the alien forces from gaining a foothold on Earth. In the heart of the city, a massive alien warship hovered in the sky, casting a dark shadow over the streets below. The ship was unlike anything humanity had ever seen, sleek, menacing, and armed with weapons capable of leveling entire cities in seconds. It was a symbol of the invaders' power, and it seemed unstoppable. But Jack knew that they couldn't let that ship stand for long. If they allowed it to continue its bombardment, it would destroy everything they had fought for. With a determination that burned like fire in his chest, Jack gathered his team for a final assault. "We hit them hard, hit them fast," Jack said, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "We make them bleed. We show them that we're not just prey. We're fighters." The team nodded in agreement, each one understanding the gravity of what they were about to do. They weren't soldiers. They were survivors, and they had nothing left to lose. As the night fell, Jack and his team made their way toward the alien warship, moving swiftly through the shadows. The city around them was in chaos, but they had a singular goal: to take down the enemy's most powerful weapon. The warship was heavily guarded, but that only made their mission more dangerous. They would have to move quickly, silently, and strike when the opportunity presented itself. As they neared the warship, Jack felt the weight of the moment. This was it, the final confrontation. They would either succeed and deal a crippling blow to the invaders, or they would die trying. But there was no turning back. The fate of humanity rested on their shoulders. The team split up as they approached the warship. They would have to infiltrate the ship's defenses and plant explosives in key areas, causing the ship's systems to fail. It was a risky move, but it was their best chance. They couldn't allow the invaders to continue their assault on Earth. Inside the warship, the aliens were unaware of the humans' approach. Their focus was on the chaos unfolding on the ground, unaware that a small group of determined humans was about to change the tide of the war. Jack and his team moved swiftly, using the cover of darkness to stay hidden. They navigated through the ship's corridors, bypassing security systems and taking out guards when necessary. The ship's defenses were formidable, but they were no match for the humans' determination. When they reached the core of the ship, Jack placed the final explosive charge, signaling to his team that it was time to fall back. But as they made their way toward the exit, an alarm blared, and the entire ship went into lockdown. "Move, now," Jack shouted, his voice echoing through the corridors. The team sprinted through the narrow halls, trying to make their way to the escape pods before the ship's self-destruct sequence activated. The ship was coming apart at the seams, and the explosions had already begun. The battle was far from over, but the humans had struck a decisive blow. As they reached the escape pods, Jack took one last look at the warship. It was burning, its massive form crumbling as the explosives tore through its systems. The aliens had underestimated humanity, and now they were paying the price. But even as the warship fell, Jack knew that the fight was far from over. The aliens would retaliate. They would learn from their mistakes. But humanity had shown them something crucial. They would never back down. No matter how many warships they sent, no matter how many armies they brought to Earth, humanity would always rise up and fight for its survival. The ship exploded in the distance, a brilliant fireball lighting up the sky. As the humans escaped to safety, they couldn't help but feel a sense of victory. It wasn't over yet, but they had just made the first real dent in the alien invasion. And for the first time since the attack began, they could see a glimmer of hope. They had proven that humanity, when pushed to the edge, was capable of anything. The war was far from over, but humanity had made its mark. And the invaders would soon learn that Earth was not a place they could easily conquer. The wrath of the invaders. The explosions from the infiltration mission were like a signal flare to the alien fleet, igniting chaos among the invaders. For the first time since their arrival, the alien soldiers experienced doubt, fear, something they had long since abandoned in their belief of superiority. The humans had struck at their core, disrupting their command, and for a brief moment, the invaders were thrown into disarray. But this confusion was fleeting. The aliens were quick to regroup, more determined than ever to crush humanity's resistance. Back on Earth, the Resistance celebrated their success, but Jack knew the fight was far from over. The aliens were not going to let this setback slide. They had seen what humanity was capable of now, and they would retaliate with a force stronger than ever. Jack sat in the war room, his gaze fixed on the large holographic map of the Earth's defenses. His team was exhausted, but their spirits were high after the success of their sabotage. Still, Jack couldn't shake the feeling that something much larger was coming. The aliens weren't just going to send more ships. They were going to send everything. "We need to be ready," Jack said, his voice low but firm. "They've tasted defeat, and they don't like it." Mia, standing beside him, gave a grim nod. "They'll be back, and they'll be angry. But we've gained some ground. We've proven we can hurt them. We can win this." "True," Jack replied, glancing around the room at the faces of his commanders. "But we can't get complacent. The next battle will be the hardest one yet. The aliens are coming with everything they've got." As if on cue, the warning alarms blared throughout the command center. Everyone froze, eyes wide as the sudden urgency flooded the room. The monitors flashed red, showing the incoming alien fleet, bigger and more powerful than anything they had seen before. "Prepare for impact," one of the techs shouted as he quickly typed commands into his terminal. The humans had prepared for this moment, knowing that the aliens would not take their defeat lightly. In the hours following the sabotage, the Resistance had fortified every last defensive position, readied every weapon, and called upon every ally to defend Earth. They had no choice now but to face the full wrath of the invaders. Jack's team was immediately called to action. He and Mia led the charge to the front lines, directing the soldiers and the tech teams. The air was thick with tension, and the weight of what was coming hung heavy in the air. They all knew that this would be humanity's defining moment, the one that could either lead them to victory or to the brink of extinction. Meanwhile, the alien fleet surged forward, their ships darkening the sky like an ominous storm. They had lost too much, and their pride demanded vengeance. The alien warships, now outfitted with devastating weapons and reinforced hulls, tore through Earth's atmosphere. Their sights were set on one target: complete annihilation of humanity's resistance. The first wave of alien ships hit with brutal force. The ground shook as their weapons blasted entire cities into ruins. The humans fought back with everything they had, launching their own attacks, but it was clear that this new wave of invaders was stronger, more organized, and far better prepared for the humans' tactics. Jack and his team fought in the front lines, holding back the invaders as best as they could. But with every shot fired, every explosion, it became clearer that the aliens had anticipated the humans' moves. The invaders were adapting quickly to the human strategies, and their warships were almost unbeatable. "We're not going to last much longer at this rate," Maya said, her voice tense as she fired at an incoming alien squad. The Resistance was strong, but the alien fleet was relentless, and their numbers were overwhelming. Jack's mind raced as the battlefield erupted into chaos. The humans had held on long enough to deal a significant blow to the invaders, but now, as the alien forces converged, they needed something more, a last-ditch effort to turn the tide. He turned to Mia, determination setting in. "We're not giving up. There's still one last play we can make." Mia nodded grimly. "What are you thinking?" "Use the alien tech," Jack said, his voice filled with purpose. "We've been studying their ships and weapons. We know how they function. If we can use their own technology against them, we can level the playing field." The alien ships were equipped with advanced cloaking technology, allowing them to appear out of nowhere. But Jack knew their weakness. There was a signal pattern they emitted when cloaking. If the humans could harness this signal, they could track every alien ship, even if it was invisible. It was a gamble, but it was their only shot. Jack ordered the tech teams to deploy the modified signal disruptors that had been prepared. It was a long shot, but if it worked, it could give the humans a critical advantage. With the final piece of the plan in motion, the Resistance soldiers launched their next counterattack. The modified technology pulsed through the battlefield, and for the first time, the human soldiers could see the cloaked alien ships. The tide began to shift. Jack watched as the alien fleet, once dominating the skies, now appeared vulnerable. The humans began picking off ships one by one, their new advantage making all the difference. "We've got them on the ropes," Maya said, her voice a mix of disbelief and triumph. But Jack didn't celebrate. He knew this battle wasn't over yet. The aliens had been hurt, but they were far from defeated. They would adapt, learn, and come back stronger. The war for Earth had only just begun, and humanity had to be ready for whatever came next. But for the first time, the invaders were no longer the ones in control. Humanity had proved they could fight, and they would continue to fight, no matter the cost. The final stand. The alien fleet, once a towering symbol of power, now looked vulnerable. Humanity had forced them into a corner, using their own technology against them. But Jack knew the fight was far from over. The final battle was upon them. The aliens were regrouping, reinforcing their ranks, and preparing to retaliate with a force that could wipe out humanity once and for all. On the battlefield, the situation was chaotic. The resistance had gained a critical advantage, but the price of victory was steep. Cities were in ruins, soldiers lay in the dirt, and the once proud human forces were beginning to feel the strain. Despite their fierce spirit, they were outnumbered, and the aliens were relentless. Every time the humans thought they had gained the upper hand, the invaders would adapt, counterattack, and strike back harder than before. "We've come this far," Jack said to his team as they regrouped in the war room, a grim determination in his eyes. "We can't stop now. This is it. The aliens are going to throw everything they have at us. This will either be our final victory or our last stand." Mia nodded, her face set in a mask of resolve. We fight until the very end." Jack turned to his commanders, every one of them looking to him for direction. "We know the aliens' weaknesses now. We have their technology. We use it, and we hit them hard. This is our last chance. If we lose here, humanity loses everything." The air was thick with the weight of the moment. There was no turning back. The humans had no more reinforcements to call upon, no more hope to cling to. It was now or never. The alien fleet, their numbers swollen after their regrouping, filled the skies. Massive warships and smaller fighter crafts moved into position, ready to launch a full-scale assault on the remaining human strongholds. The Resistance's defenses, already battered from the previous waves of battle, seemed like they would crumble beneath the alien onslaught. But humanity was ready. The modified alien technology, now in the hands of every soldier, had leveled the playing field. The cloak signal disruptors, which once only provided a slight advantage, now gave humanity the ability to target and destroy the aliens' advanced ships with precision. The key to victory had been unlocked, but they had to be quick. "Now," Jack barked, signaling the launch of the final offensive. The human forces fired their weapons, unleashing a barrage of energy blasts and missiles at the alien fleet. The modified tech lit up the sky as the invisible ships materialized before their eyes, exposed and vulnerable. For the first time, the humans had the element of surprise. They moved quickly, striking with surgical precision, taking out warships one by one. But the alien fleet was far from defeated. They launched their counterattack with deadly force, retaliating against the human forces with every weapon at their disposal. The battlefield became a swirling storm of energy blasts, explosions, and screams of war. Jack fought in the thick of it, leading his troops with the fury of someone who had nothing left to lose. Every alien ship he destroyed, every strike against the invaders felt like a step closer to salvation. Yet every moment was a gamble. The sheer size of the alien fleet, their numbers, and their technology meant that the odds were always stacked against them. But Jack's determination never wavered. Mia's voice crackled through his comms, urging him to stay focused. "We're winning, but we need to push harder. The aliens are digging in. They're preparing their final assault. Jack nodded, gripping his weapon tighter. Then we break them. Now. With a roar, humanity's forces surged forward. They pushed deeper into the heart of the alien fleet, striking at their command ships, their energy sources, their vital points. The invaders, still reeling from the shock of humanity's resistance, were starting to fall apart. Their formations broke as more and more ships were taken down. The tide of battle was shifting. The invaders could feel it. But the aliens had one final weapon, something far more devastating than anything humanity had faced before. As Jack and his team closed in on their last target, a massive alien warship, the unthinkable happened. The ship released a burst of energy that sent shockwaves through the battlefield. It was a desperation move, a last-ditch effort to take down humanity's forces in one fatal blow. Jack saw it coming, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. He knew what he had to do, and there was no hesitation in his mind. Everybody out. Jack screamed into the comms, but it was too late. The blast was already tearing through the battlefield, destroying everything in its path. In that instant, Jack and his team did the unthinkable. They charged straight at the alien warship, using every ounce of strength, every scrap of energy, and every bit of modified tech to take down the final bastion of the alien invaders. The moment they reached the warship's core, Jack gave the order to detonate everything they had left. The explosion rocked the galaxy. The alien fleet was no more. Humanity had done it. The silence that followed was deafening. The battlefield, once full of the chaos of war, was now eerily still. The invaders were defeated. The final push had come at a heavy cost, but humanity had survived. Against all odds, they had won. Jack stood alone among the ruins, his heart pounding, his body battered, but his spirit unbroken. The battle was over, and humanity had proven something to the galaxy that day. No matter how strong the enemy, no matter how hopeless the situation, humanity would never back down. They would fight until the very end, and they would always rise from the ashes. And with that, Earth had not only survived, it had sent a message to the galaxy. Humanity was not a species to be underestimated.